The sixth Rebbe of Lubavitch, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, said the following in explanation of the mitzvah of the Pesach Sheni, the mitzvah of the second Passover offering. I'll say some of it in the original Yiddish for flavor. Pesach Sheni in Yonei is as is nito kein farfallen. The idea of Pesach Sheni is nothing is forever lost. Farfallen means it fell, that it's gone. Miken alamol farichten. It's always possible to correct. And he specifies now, even one who was tamei, one who was impure, or someone who was on a far distant path. And it says there, afilu lachem, uses the word to you, implying that someone may have even willingly neglected the Pesach, the first Pesach offering, or at very least didn't make the proper effort to be near the place where it had to be done. Even so, it's possible to rectify it. And this really is at the essence of the Pesach Sheni. It is all about the idea that nothing is really lost. And it kind of goes against the grain of our common thinking, and it surely doesn't fit entirely with our general conception of a conservatively religious point of view where everything is just very, very important and, you didn't do that? Okay, there's no second chance. But on the other hand, the spiritual viewpoint as presented in the Torah, and particularly as it's explained in the mystical writings, is very clear about this. And the idea is that in our temporal way of thinking, literally, time passes on. And what you did wrong in the past, you can try to do better next time. But you can't climb back into that past. There's no time machine allowing you to redo it. But the spiritual perspective is that there is a realm which is above time. And that becomes like a time machine. It's not literally going back in time. It's going to a sphere which is above time, from where we have access to our mistakes and our challenges and our failures of the past. And on that level, when we correct it, it corrects even our past failures as well. And not only that, those failures become transformed into something positive and elevate us. And this entire message is embodied in the Torah in the commandment of the Pesach Sheni. And that's why this week's discussion and this week's Parsha is such a key one. It's all about not fretting about what was done, not becoming depressed about our mistakes, about what we neglected, or about what we did wrong. Or better put, only enough in order to reapply ourselves with vigor and enthusiasm. And we can actually transform those negative encounters into something which raises us even higher. In the spirit of what the Talmud says, that in the place where the Baal Teshuvah means penitence or return, and Baal means the master of the return, the one who erred and came back stands on a level higher than the Tzaddik, than the one who was always righteous. And the explanation to all of this can be found in the Pesach Sheni. But let us first, to understand this properly, go to the unusual circumstances under which the Pesach Sheni became communicated to the Jewish people. In the Torah, we know the 613 commandments, 248 do's, 365 don'ts, a whole kind of list of things that we can and can't do, our blueprint for living, neglecting nothing, and indeed, even this mechanism of repair is in the Torah, and yet we don't have just God saying to Moses, okay, tell the people there's going to be a Pesach Sheni. If they miss the first time, they get it a second time. The Torah writes about the Pesach Sheni, but in the form of a story ending with the divine command. But the beginning of the story are the people who had come into contact with a corpse. This, as we mentioned in previous lessons, rendered them ritually impure. And now they say this beautiful statement, Lama Nigara. Why should we be worse? Why should we miss out? Now, in their ritual state, they were disqualified from bringing the Pesach offering that was now being commanded in this second year from the Exodus. And many of us, in our attitudes towards religion, would say, oh, great, of course we have to do what we have to do, but hey, if I'm, the Torah says I can't, it's kind of like getting out of class. How do we look at that? And their answer was they did not take it with equanimity. The idea is we want to be involved in the fulfillment as many of the divine commandments as possible. We want to connect to God through this way. And we also want to be part of our community. And that's why they say in the midst of the children of Israel, everyone's going to be doing this. We want to do this as well. Why should we lose out? Of course, it seems like an absurd question because they're answering it themselves. If one was tameh, ritually impure can't do it. That itself is why they are different and cannot do what others can do. But the commentaries explain that some alternatives are suggested where they could somehow be involved in the Pesach Sheni. But nonetheless, in the first Pesach offering. But nonetheless, the conclusion is, no, their state of impurity does not enable them to do that. But God gives them something even more beautiful, which is a second chance a month later. And this is the Pesach Sheni. It's a day in the month of Iyar, the second month, Nisan is the first month. And that day you bring a korban. You bring the Pesach offering. And yet there's no holiday as such where you can't do work. There's no week of not being allowed to eat bread and cake, leavened foods. There's no commandment to eat matzah per se. There is a commandment to eat matzah together with the Pesach offering. It says, "Amatzot u'marorim yichalu." You should eat it together with matzah and bitter herbs, just as the first Pesach offering was. And so we have these distinctions where, as the Talmud explains, that on the day of Pesach Sheni, you can have chametz and matzah together. On the same day, there's no prohibition to own chametz, meaning bread, cakes, leavened foods. There's no prohibition to eat them even. We eat matzah that day, but we also have chametz and matzah together. In distinction to the first Pesach, where it's 7 days long, and that whole 7 days, you can have matzah, and you should have matzah, but absolutely no chametz. It's, before the holiday, after the holiday, that's chametz mode. But during the holiday, only things that are not leavened, only matzah. And in these two distinctions, we will see how powerful is this dimension of teshuvah and returning, and how the dynamic of repentance expresses itself in these distinctions between the first Pesach and the second Pesach.